to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Joel, today's topic, as usual, derives from something you posted on Facebook. And what you posted on Facebook actually raised the question in a really interesting way. I think I remember what it said. It said, who smiles at you? And that's not the way we often think about stuff. We think about, well, who have I smiled at? That kind of thing. But I think many of us would actually be a little bit weird. What's the word I want? Leery, I guess is the word. We're a little bit leery of answering the question because now we have to ask ourselves, well, who would smile at us?
Yeah, and that is, and I don't remember the exact post, but my recollection was more of like, who do you smile at? And either one works, but who makes you smile is more of a concept that I think I thought it led to. So
I think you're right. Yeah. But I also saw it from the point of view of who smiles at you because it's a reflection. I mean, everything is in this universe is a reflection, right? We live in a universe of mirror. So if the question is who's smiling at you, the real question that follows up with that is how did that come about?
Yeah,
because the universe is reflecting back to you.
Yes, and the people. One of the big things we talk about almost weekly, unless we're talking about one of my tangents, but one of the
one of your tangents. You're the only one who does tangents around here, really?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, you do too. But the idea for me was the energy of people. One of the most valuable things that me pretty well as far as I love to laugh. I love to tell jokes. They're not always great. They're really sarcastic sometimes, but it's just, I have a weird sense of humor, and but also love people that make me laugh and people that make me smile. So that energy to me is, some people have the ability to just make me smile and just make me laugh. And that's one of the most calming things. I have one of my good friends, she's able to, she knows me pretty well, and she'll say something really, and make me laugh or see it differently. I value that. I value the energy of a smile, the humor, the laughter, all that stuff it's all emotionally based. And as we talked about with the emotional guidance scale, that's the weekly thing we always mention, at least, is, that knowing where you're at and when you're in a place where even if you're not really in a mood to smile, but somebody makes you smile, you've moved up several spots in the emotional guidance scale, depending on what your scale is. And that's sort of the point of all we've all been talking about all this time, is how to move up that emotional guidance scale. Identify what your emotions are there. They're not good or bad emotions. They're emotions that there's higher and lower vibrations. And moving up that emotional guidance scale is the dream. So smiling is, I think smiling is probably, and laughing, that whole category is probably right up there with gratitude as the highest level of the emotional guidance. I think they're neck and neck in my mind.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it, but you're right. I mean, anytime that you're smiling, you're directly tying into emotion. So it certainly belongs on the emotional guidance scale. That certainly makes sense. And it always feels good. So it's got to be high up on the scale. Yeah, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's barely, I mean, obviously there's different levels of humor, right? So just like there are different levels of positivity, there's going to be different vibrations depending on what particular thing you're focusing on.
Sure, of course.
I tend to prefer to focus on stuff where the humor is not making fun of somebody, it's not tearing somebody down or something like that, because it's just the lower vibration that I like to laugh at. But the fact is that those different levels of humor are reflective of where we are on that scale. So yeah, I don't know exactly where I would put it on the scale. I think I'd probably put it in various places depending on what it is that we're laughing about.
But and I've told a story in the show a long time ago, and I'll pull it up. It's one of my favorite stories. So I've lived in this house now for 24 years. I'm sorry, for 12 years. And it feels like 12 years. So
sometimes it feels like 36.
yeah, exactly. So when my son TJ passed away in 2014 in a horrific accident.
Right.
And I was obviously, dealing with it, but man, really low on the emotional guidance scale is an understatement for a while.
Yeah.
And, you can't really escape that. Anybody that's ever lost a child, it's just something that you can't describe. I hope nobody has to ever feel that. So it was this period of my life where it was like, okay, I, I I didn't even know what I was going to be doing. I was still going to work. I was still going to the gym, but there wasn't a lot of joy in my life.
Yeah.
But I was working hard at it. I knew I would find joy again. So my next door neighbors at the time, I did not know them at all.
Hmm.
Okay, they had a boatload of kids. I didn't know who these kids belonged to. They were funny, but they were always jumping on the trampoline. I mean, these kids literally lived in the backyard,
Wow.
and so every day at lunch, then I used to come home for lunch, and I usually grill me a salmon or cook me a steak daily on the grill. And so
Hmm.
I'd go out there, and the kids would be like, "Hey, Joel, all this," and I'd go, "Hey," I didn't even know their names at the time, but I just wave, and they were kids. I love children, so
Sure.
it was they didn't bother me, but they just were there. So over time, the little boy, he was only 4 at the time, and he was in the backyard, and he was always scared to death of me, and he's very shy.
Oh.
So I didn't see him much. Like I'd walk out, he'd run, and so anyway, no big deal. Again, didn't care that they weren't really in my orbit. So one day, at the back door, it felt fallish or something. Had the back door open, screen door open, and let's say that child's name is Johnny.
Okay.
Okay, just for confidentiality and
Give
all.
them a name. Yeah.
So yeah, so I hear one of the little girls scream really loud, "Grandma, Johnny's peeing in the backyard again." And I hear Johnny respond with, "No, I'm not." Well, I look out the window, and here's Johnny with his pants down around his ankles, peeing straight up in the air. And I don't know why that was so hilarious. Whether he just him literally proclaiming emphatically, "I'm not peeing," in the middle of him peeing in the backyard.
Right. Right.
Just the disgusted nature of his, I guess, sister screaming at the time, "Johnny's peeing in the backyard." It's disgusting, and Grandma never came out at all. So I don't know why it was that combination of things. For the first time since TJ died, I laughed, and I laughed
Mm.
hard, and I laughed the absurdity of this little kid out there. Little
Right.
kids will pee and their pants are on around their ankles, and it's just oblivious to anything. He didn't know,
Right.
and so I'm like, oh boy, that was funny. So as that was a turning point for me, and
Yeah.
also I just I don't know if that was a connection, but after time, obviously I got to know these kids very well. Johnny is now 12,
Mm.
and he literally is almost my kid. He's over here all the time. He's a
Oh.
great kid. He's hilarious. In fact, we rode go-karts last night. So he's this. His family, we're very close, and it's weird that you get so close to your neighbors, and but yet that, I mean, we do Christmases together. We've been on vacations together, all
Nice.
based on the humor. Because I told him recently, he doesn't remember the story,
Sure.
obviously. He was 4,
Yeah.
but I told him, like, it's like, do you know why we're so close? And so, like, it's hilarious now because it was just that connection. So I really am grateful that I don't know what else would have made me laugh, and that was
Yeah.
just that impromptu thing. So the concept for me is, I know how important laughing is, how much smiling is, how much when you look at somebody, you look at them, you nod, and you smile. I speak to everybody, uh, and don't care if they speak back. I'm not deterred by that. I like to send that energy out, and the smiling energy, the laughing energy. That's a really important tool in my world, and I know a lot of times my younger clients, say 15, 14, 15 or 6 year olds that don't want to be there,
Mm-hmm.
they usually come in very grumpy,
Mm.
thinking they hate me, but not because they even know me, but because their mom made them show up.
Right. Right.
And so if I can ever get them to crack a smile and laugh, it's like the instant stress breaker for them, and that's what I'll develop bonds. So one of the techniques that I use is, especially when they just will nod their head and not answer, I have like 200 questions that get more absurd as we go, and I mentioned this recently. And
Yes.
so as I was, what I do is I'll ask, "What do you like to do?" Most nod, ughs and shoulder shrugs. and I just keep getting deeper and deeper into questions, like, do you like badminton? Just something that's just random. And so this one kid was there and he lasted 40 minutes
Oh,
before in worst case scenario, I make it to the very end and the session's over. So, he 40, I think it was number 153 actually is that question.
you're counting
And
questions.
yeah, there's a list and they're in order for a reason. So the question that I ask him, I go, what's your favorite Beatle? And he goes, what? He goes, bro, what does that have to do with anything? I said, is it Japanese Beatle? That's mine. He goes, what? And he just started laughing. And it was this, and I go, what's so funny? He said, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. I go, well, I need to know everything I need to know. And I figure at some point you're going to, and that started us. He told me a story about, and then that ended up being a really big breakthrough for us. Him and I developed a big therapeutic bond. He was with me for like 2 or 3 years. He's doing fantastic now. And actually he texted me about, him. I think he's first year of college now, maybe coming up, and just doing great. And and he'll occasionally simply just send a picture of a beetle, and which I love. It's just this random thing that nobody else would know. So
Right.
my point is humor, laughter, smiling. There's a connection. There's an energy. There's something to that. And I don't think everybody's different. I don't know if it's that way for everybody, but it really means something to me. And that is something that I reflect and attract energy. I mimic energy. People mimic energy back, and so I can get people to get connected with that. It's a great feeling, and I don't know anybody that doesn't, on some level, doesn't like to laugh.
Oh, I think that's true. Yeah. And what I especially love about both of those stories is they both are stories about humor that's based on what's absurd.
Yes.
So absurd that there's no way to take it seriously. There's no way to make any sense of reality out of it. So you can't hang on to it. You can't latch on. You can't be stuck on it.
Yeah.
You can't be blocked by it because it's so ridiculous. The only option left is just to laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
It's stupid.
It's just silly, stupid stuff, and there's just something about that. And once you get somebody to crack and smile, and then we got something. And that's the idea of being able to implement the power of smiling, the power of laughter. It is a great tool. I know for me is I can watch a comedy sometimes. It's got to be, again, I got weird taste sometimes, but I could watch something if I just like to laugh, and if I'm not having a great day, sometimes watching something funny and absurd is all you need, and that can be a really important tool. But when you understand what's going on, in the sort of in the brain when all that happens, the emotion of feeling good, the emotion of laughter. There, Abraham Hicks, Esther actually mentions in the book, there's really only 2 emotions. There's really only 2. You have a bunch of different names for them, but there's positive, happy kind of stuff, and there's sad and depressed kind of stuff. There's scales of everything, as you said. That, I don't want anybody saying, "Well, Joel, that doesn't make sense." But there's basically 2 emotions, positive and negative.
Yeah. And
when you can start getting the brain trending toward positive, and humor is one of those things. It can happen. It's just a great mindset. It's a gateway into a connection, and that's important in life. A connection, and smiling to me is one of the most important connections you can make, because it's just genuine. You don't. It can be faked, of course, but the reciprocal smile, the connection that can be developed from that's really important. Also, the mindset that humor can make things, like you said, absurd. If I'm worried about something, but yet I can laugh about something, it's like, okay, maybe I can get a new perspective here. Maybe I can. We have a big like Netflix, and there's a couple comedians that are on tours right now. They're selling out to huge audiences, and comedy has made a great comeback, and it's pretty cool. I think it's a great concept.
It's also, I mean, to tie into the concept that we were talking about earlier about the absurdity of the 2 examples of humor that you were giving, I think it's also an icebreaker.
Yes.
In that when we get into a negative mindset, it's almost as if we're encased in ice.
Yes.
I mean, it feels hard. And many people will tell us that, right?
Yes.
I know from my own experience, it just when you're in that negative space, everything just feels hard.
Yes.
So the ice that we're talking about breaking here is that hardness. And that's
yes.
one of the beauties of humor. Actually, is one of the few things that allows you to climb the emotional guidance scale quickly because of that fact. The fact that it can just break through, it can shatter that kind of hardness.
Back to the story of the little boy at the time, Johnny. When I had a lot of friends that were reaching out, obviously, and they were like,
Sure.
"How you doing?" I said, "Fine. Can we get together?" No, I'm not quite ready. Nobody had access to me. I was hardened to that. I didn't want access. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I went to work, did my job, did a good job during my job. That was a break from all this. But I wouldn't usually talk about it in my sessions on any level.
Sure.
I didn't talk about it to too many people. So this kid had access that nobody else had. Now, by the way, he had no clue.
Right.
Yeah. Now he thinks it's a hilarious story. He goes, "You mean you saw my butt?" And I go, I said, "Probably. I don't. Yes, it's not wasn't the highlight of my day. Don't worry about that." But, and so, but he just was, and it's so authentic. And him and I have this wonderful bond right now. And it's just, I really credit him totally unintentionally. He had no. He was a 4-year-old boy. He didn't even know I was suffering. He did. My son had died. No, they did. The whole family. None of those people knew anything at the time about this. And so he came along with. I wasn't blocking him because I didn't think it was something I had to block.
What would you block?
Yeah, I was blocking everything else. All the reaching out, all the friends reaching out. Like I assure you, I might have went out to dinner one time with friends between TJ dying and this young man.
Wow.
But I'd go to the gym, put my headphones on. In fact, I actually went to a different gym a lot because I didn't want to see people I knew, and I wouldn't make eye contact. I just worked out. So it's sort of similar to what you're saying. When you're blocking, it's really hard. So getting through that when you're actually trying not to laugh or trying not to be happy. I didn't think that at the time. But there was so much hurt there. It just was hard to do anything. And so once he broke that ice for me, everything changed. I had dinner with friends, and then over the years, he obviously quit being scared of me, and we had this hilarious relationship. It's funny because at Halloween when he was little, he'd say, "Here's what I'll make sure you have this kind of candy for me." And, so I mentioned to him I like Reese's cups. So he used to smuggle me Reese's cups over. Because he hated Reese's cups. So he'd bring me the Reese's cup, and I would exchange the sweet tarts with him. And so, and of course, his mom knew all this. There was nothing, hiding behind that. And so we had this, he was my chocolate dealer for 3 years. It was really funny.
That is funny.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful example because it broke right through all of your defenses.
Yes.
It broke through every single wall you put up, and it did so, like you said, unintentionally. He had no idea that he was doing
that. He wasn't doing it for me. He was just peeing in the backyard.
It was an example of the universe. The universe delivered something at the exact moment that you needed it in the way that you could handle it.
Yes, and so it was this wonderful thing at the moment that it made me laugh, and then I literally thought and I laughed pretty hard, and after I took a deep breath and I literally said, "I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay."
Wow, did you really?
I really did. Because I didn't know if I could laugh again, and you know me well. I laugh a lot. I
also know that feeling too, because when you get in that really bad place, it does feel that way.
Yes,
it feels like there will never be humor again, even if your rational mind knows, oh well, there will be.
Yeah,
that's not the way it feels.
No, it isn't, and that's been 10 years ago, and it was a turning point. So I very much attribute laughing and then smiling and then the connection that can come with that and what evolved from that friendship. His family is one of the most important things in my life right now, and that's all started with they tell the story. It's like people say, "How did you guys meet?" And he goes, "Well,
I was being in the backyard.
In the backyard, So.
It almost sounds like something out of a cartoon strip, you know?
It is, and it is again. It's like a lot of my life. It's almost just it's absurd. It makes no sense. It just it happened. But it's so cool to see that. But learning to find that, being able to break that, and I love your connection. That hardened feeling
Mhm.
when you're really hurt emotionally, when you've been traumatized
Yes.
deeply, you're protecting against further hurt.
That's
You're
hardening. Yeah.
yeah, that hardening thing, and you just get into that neutral mindset. You're almost it's not dissociation in the classical sense, but it's a in my mind it's a type of dissociation of I want to just keep it right in the middle. I want to
Yeah.
keep it. I don't want to. I don't want to feel anything,
That's right. Yes.
good or bad.
Yes. Yeah. Because if I can feel nothing good or bad, then I won't hurt anymore.
Yes, absolutely. That's important, and not hurt yourself anymore because I was, I was like, I don't know, when TJ passed away, I didn't know if I was going to survive it.
Mm.
I didn't know how you should feel. I had
Mm.
a bunch of advice from people all telling me how I should grieve, and and grieving is certainly something it is individually based and what works for you. I changed perspective on grieving because I never, I'd lost to that point, I only lost my grandmother. I lost my grandfather when I was younger. But those are people that, at some point, if life goes as planned, that's the order it's supposed to happen in.
Hmm. Yeah.
And,
So it's not a
both
surprise.
yeah. But when you lose a child, you can't comprehend that. And
Mhm.
it just sends things so deep. And
Yeah.
now I'm not, I haven't reframed TJ's death into a good thing. You know that it's never going to be good. It's something, but I've also look at that how his death changed me. I've accomplished more since he died, and I was doing well before he died, but I've accomplished more. I've gone deeper. I've gone stronger. I've gone harder. I just my perspective was I got to grow from this. I got to grow for him. I got to go experience all this, and that worked great for me.
Mm. Yeah. That's an interesting choice that you made too, to decide that you wanted to do it because you had to do it for him.
Yeah. I know a lot of people will say, well, that's a bad attitude, and
I don't think so. I would
well,
disagree with them on that. I think it's actually a very common thing to do.
yeah, to me it makes sense. My perspective was not, and I want to be really clear. Up to that point, I was doing really well.
Mm.
I wasn't in. It isn't like I pulled up from the abyss. I was doing very well in all
Right.
areas of my life. Uh, but to get to the level that I had coming, I just sort of viewed it as like, well, he only made it to 23,
Hmm.
so I got to go harder, longer, deeper, faster, more. I got to go do all that experience more because in my mind, he's with me, obviously, and in
Hmm.
my mind, from the non-physical. So I got to go experience that. I got to, and oftentimes I talk to him frequently, especially at really cool things,
Mm.
and it's just I just used it as he can't do these things now, and I just got to go. So I become far more successful than I ever even imagined at that point. It was something that I was able to get to another gear I didn't know.
It was also the way that you did it, in that you found a way to do it from a positive perspective, from one that felt good to you. Because you
Yes.
can also get obsessive with that kind of thing too.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So
That's
so
true.
it could have gone either way, really. I mean,
Well,
it
and
came down to
that's
what your choice was.
yeah. I hear a lot of people say you should be living for yourself, and I'm saying I don't think they understand what I'm saying. I live for
Mm.
myself. I'm not under some delusion of. It's just I take whatever life has thrown me some really crazy curveballs, and a lot of them are my fault. And
Mm.
I have come back from each and every one of them, and I had to figure out a way. Uh, and I will never concede that TJ's death was a positive. I will never concede that, but I will say my response to it is as strong as it could be, and
Mhm.
it's something that I honor him with that. I view that, but it's not an occupying thing in my brain. I know I'm successful. I have as you know, I feel I have an incredible life. I have the
Mhm.
life I love, and it isn't every day that I'm getting up thinking, okay, I got to go to work for TJ. That's not what I mean. It's just the overall concept of moving forward, working hard. My outlook, my perspective of things is, like, hey, and he was his death actually using the law of attraction, if the timing of this is a couple of years after we first started talking. And we weren't, I don't think we were regular at that point. I don't remember the time frame. It was a little weird for me, that time frame. But in fact, we had talked a few times at that point. We hadn't talked, we hadn't got codes. But wow, it was something that I was able to say, I really believe with all my heart that his energy, his frequency is whatever makes TJ exists in the non-physical. I believe that. I believe I exist here and in the non-physical, and the physical will disappear for me as well, but I will never I'll not cease being. And I believe that. And I've had instances where that's reinforced, and I'm not trying to talk anybody else to believe that either. It's just what I believe, and that's a powerful statement for me.
It reminds me of a line from a movie. This is a Judi Dench movie that came out roughly, I'm going to say 15 years ago, something like that. And it's the story of a woman who is reflecting back on her youth during World War II when she played in an all-girl jazz band. The movie's called Last of the Blonde Bombshells. And in that movie, the movie begins with her husband's death. And they're at the wake, not the wake. It's a memorial service, something along that line. But at that service, Judi Dench's character talks with her granddaughter, and the reason she chooses her granddaughter is her children really aren't on the same wavelength with her. At that, they have their own way of looking at things where the death is concerned, and it's not matching up with the way she's looking at it. But she figures she could talk to her granddaughter, which makes sense. I mean, we've talked a lot about how kids are, well, first of all, they're a lot closer to source because they so recently came from it. But also there's an honesty to them. Kids, they're not carrying all the baggage. There's a whole lot of reasons why it's just great to be interacting with a young kid. So she's talking to her granddaughter, and she says, I need to ask you a question. I need to ask your advice. And her granddaughter, wide-eyed, says, well, I'll try. I don't know what I can do here. And she says, what's the best way to do honor to the dead? And her granddaughter says, oh, that's easy. You just go on living.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what that's what your entire approach there was all about. Yeah. You found a way to go on living to honor the dead.
Absolutely. And it's a powerful tool. And I said chills down my spine when you said that. That was really cool. I've never seen the movie, never even heard the title before. So thank you.
Good movie, by the way, especially like old jazz music. Really good.
Yeah, don't really, but probably a good movie still.
If you don't, then don't watch it. Right?
yeah. Maybe screw you. I don't care. But no, it's fantastic that and I love when you can get lines from movies. It's so well written. I know that whole movie is good because that one line is obviously a well written, well placed line.
Yeah. In fact, the whole movie, literally the story is about how she decides to try to get the band back together again that she used to play with.
That's awesome.
All the adventures that they go through to make that happen. It sounds like a very plain story, but it has a lot of these kinds of themes in it that we're talking about, dealing with all kinds of life issues along the way. And all the different characters go through those life issues, and some not so nicely, and others come through it better. It's the same kind of thing over and over.
That's wonderful. There's a movie, Robin Williams made a movie called What Dreams May Come.
Oh, I remember that one. Yes.
Yeah. And I think 1992. And
roughly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
By the way, my fundamentalist Southern Baptist friend, do not watch that movie on any, don't.
I can understand why. Yeah.
You'll be very upset with the outcome. Sorry.
Yeah.
But other than you guys, it's a fantastic movie. And it basically emulates what I believe. And, yeah, it really does. It's really cool. But it's well written that way as well. There's some chill zone moments where you just like, oh, but he did a wonderful performance. And of course, again, there's people that are going to be horrified by the movie just because of this religious suggestions or spiritual. Yeah. But hey, that works. So don't watch it. But it is for those that like a good story, like a good movie. It reminds me that's one of those movies that few people watched. It didn't do that good in the box office. And actually, when I watched it, my mother was still alive at the time, and she basically told me why that was an evil movie. And I was like, Okay, well, that's probably why I liked it so much. Just you know,
Yeah, it's one of those movies that will rattle your cage if you have a cage of that kind. It will definitely rattle it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, but without with and again, I'm not against anybody's religion. I'm just simply saying that there are things that can elevate you that you see, like laughter, smiling, or a good line in a movie. Uh, some just some bizarre things. There's a moment, there's uh, my on my island in Florida that I have a place at where the
Right.
bench is located. Uh, there's a there's a phenomenon that'll happen very rarely. Is usually every day, as long as there's no clouds, which they've been inundated with clouds the last few days. But there's a moment when the sun goes down. So everybody on the island, or most people now, will walk to the island, to the edge of the Gulf of Mexico, and watch the sun go down.
Oh wow.
And when it goes
That's
down,
spectacular.
there's hundreds, maybe 1,000 people up and down the beach, and there's a
Wow.
loud clap and a roar. So it's beautiful to watch. However, one of the things that every time I see it, it gives me a chill. And I don't know the atmospheric conditions that cause this, but when the sun goes down, there's this exact moment when it just goes right below the horizon, and this green, almost like explosion happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare. It has to be the right, and it is just, it will send chill. It just makes you go, oh wow. Now I know there's scientific explanation of why that happens, but it feels very spiritual for me. I turn it into a spiritual experience.
Sure.
And it feels good. So those are, you can find it in places, even if it doesn't necessarily have a spiritual connotation to it. You can turn it into that, or a happy connotation to it. You can turn it into that.
Absolutely. Well, that's part of the idea that we get to choose what our response is. I mean,
Yes,
part of the way
exactly.
of creating your own response is deciding what you want the response to mean.
Yes.
I mean, if you
Yeah.
if you had responses without meaning, what would be the point of responding? Yeah,
Well, yeah, yes, exactly. And then, that also just says, no matter where you are, what's going on, your perspective is, in the way you frame things is, I know my favorite place to be is down on the bench looking at sunsets. I love that. I love to
Mm.
go to a certain restaurant, there's two good burger places on the island.
Hmm.
I love those burger places. They're
Hmm.
competing, but I love the couple of
Yeah.
restaurants I love. So I have a whole thing when I'm down on the island. I just love. It's just fantastic. It's a different place for me, um, and I know that feeling can exist here. It just feels different down there, and so but I also am aware I can emulate that feeling here. Our neighborhood has a little pond, and there's a bench by the pond. Now it's not the bench by the Gulf of Mexico, but it's a bench, and I can sit on the bench and meditate, and hopefully not many people go by, and and I can just focus on. It's amazing when that happens,
Mm.
and I can get that same feeling in a much different environment. But hey, it's all about mindset.
Yes. Yes. That mindset and the control that we have over it. That's been a topic of the conversation for a number of episodes lately, not just the ones that I do with you. And I think there's a good reason for it. We are currently in a time period where a lot of people complain. We've mentioned this before. They're complaining about the great divisiveness in the world, and what happens politically, and what happens in the news, and what happens with wars, and what happens with the climate. And I mean, there's like a whole bunch of stuff that people are freaking out about. And it occurs to me that what we're talking about is the solution for all of that. Not that it solves those issues externally in a real way, but it solves it internally for us. And the reason that's so important is when we solve it for ourselves, we take all the pressure off. That's what the humor thing was all about. The humor thing was taking all that pressure off, because that hardness we were talking about, that's really hard, and it's hard emotionally. It takes a toll. It drains us. It's like that. It pulls all the energy out, and it makes life impossible to lead and so forth. So when we're able to do something that shatters that, as we were describing earlier, the ability to laugh at something shatters that, we're basically empowering ourselves to find a way to feel good about stuff that other people aren't feeling good about.
That's and this is where mindset slash perspective, combination of your controlling your mindset, which controls your perspective, is this morning the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, opened 1,700 points lower.
Okay.
1,700 points. Of course, everybody's freaking out. The economy, of course,
Mm-hmm.
both political parties are blaming the other political party for
Of course,
that.
yeah. It's everybody else's fault.
It's everybody's fault. I mean, my 401k, I heard somebody say my 401k is down $70,000, this, that, and the other. You
I
know,
remember back in 2000, people were saying that their 401k was now a 201k.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. So I don't even need to explain you my mindset today. It's the stock market went on sale for me this morning. It was like a big clearance sale, and it's like yes. So I took advantage of the clearance sale.
Of course
I
you
loved it. Yeah, yeah. And I've been waiting for this day for a while.
did.
Also, so you never lose any money in the stock market if you never sell. That's the key. You don't ever panic sell. But one of the most famous wealthy people is Warren Buffett. What he did, and I'm sure we'll talk about this going forward. His company, Berkshire Hathaway, is required to report stock holdings at the end of every quarter. So we don't know what he does. So at the end of last quarter, he sold most of his Apple stock. And everybody was wondering why he was sitting on $288 billion in cash. This morning, I now know why.
Yeah, he was buying.
I don't know. We won't know for the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
But I promise you, mark this day, and when the quarter comes up, I have Berkshire Hathaway stock, and I'll get the report. And everything was discounted. I promise you, he went heavy on everything, and that's why he is the genius. He just knows what he's doing. He's very methodical in what he does. He's the one that's famous for saying, be greedy when everybody's conservative, be conservative when everybody's greedy. It's just, just do the opposite of what the sheep are doing, and you're going to get really rich. And when this washes out, he's going to make, just gigantic money on that. And it's something that I admire, that he's able to keep that mindset and perspective. And anybody else that woke up this morning and is worried about this, worried about that, or they woke up and say, here we go. It's a great day. It's a great day to, this opportunity. Amazon stock was $200, 4 weeks ago, and it's down to $160 today. Amazon's not going anywhere. So let's, it's that. And this is not financial advice to anybody. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Please don't listen to me.
Thank you for the disclaimer. Yes.
Yeah. Please don't ever say, well, Joel said bye. You got to do what you got to do. But I'm giving you philosophies and perspective, and that's sort of the point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we often like to comment on how you especially like to comment on how no matter who gets elected president, you're going to make more money next year. You don't pay any attention. You don't even know what happened in the news.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the same thing with the stock market. Until you told me that the stock market was down 17, I had no clue.
Yeah.
I was not paying attention to it at all. So it didn't affect me even a tiny bit, even a millimeter. It had no effect on me at all because I was paying no attention to it.
Yeah, it's something that I have scheduled investments. I do what they call cost averaging. So every Monday morning, I have a set amount of stock that's being bought in certain things, and so it was when pre-market, the guy that sort of with Fidelity that is sort of my representative, he said, "Do you know what's going on?" And I go, "No." And he described it, and he said, "Do you want me to hold that investment for today?" And I go, "Are you kidding? Can you quadruple it? Let's do it. I up the investment. Of course, I'm buying more. It's like what? Well, it just went on sale, and it's just that mindset." He laughed. He goes, "You're the only one that said that today." So,
that's a good sign right there.
Yeah. I said, "Well, see, there we go." And again, I'm saying that works for me. But I sort of apply that to everything. No matter who's going to be president, I don't know how, but I'm going to come. Since I turned my life around, I believe 1995 is when I got in recovery. Whoever that was, maybe still Clinton. I don't know.
Clinton, right?
Yeah, and So when I quit gambling, every single penny I had, shockingly, I had a better life. It's amazing how that worked out for me. And every year that I haven't gambled since, it didn't matter who was president after that, good, bad, ugly. I have significantly increased my income, well-being, my perspective since then. And no matter what happens with this bizarre scene we have now coming up, I will figure out a way. It'll everybody said, "Are you worried about inflation?" I go, "I'll just make more money. It's not a problem."
Yeah, well, and you mentioned inflation. I'll mention how I had to deal with inflation this year and last year. Well, we all had to deal with it in ways we hadn't had to deal with it before, but I had to deal with it in terms of pricing for the gardening business.
Yes.
Because especially with gardening is something that is relatively underpriced compared to other commodities, to other services, and so forth. If you look at what gardens cost compared to fixing your car or going to the beauty salon or whatever, it's lower. The hourly rate's lower, and so as a result, you're living within a realm where both the company and the employees are most affected by any shift that happens in the inflation.
Sure.
Which means that when the inflation happens, you have to respond or risk going out of business.
Yes.
It's literally that severe.
Absolutely.
So for the last few years, I had to do some pretty steep increases in what I charge customers.
Yes.
And if I had blinked on that one, I probably would not be in business today.
Yeah.
But I didn't blink because I knew it really wasn't me at all. All I was doing was responding to what the market was saying. This is what's going on. And then add in the fact that after the pandemic, many people will remember there was the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is where people who worked in the service industry, that's what we're in, the service industry, people working in the service industry started leaving the service industry, but creating a new dynamic where there were fewer overall people, which meant that the cost of labor went up. So I had a double whammy going on. I had the inflation going up severely, and I had the labor rate going up severely at the same instant.
Yes.
So literally, the price I had to charge to customers to stay in business skyrocketed over the last 2 years. Absolutely skyrocketed.
Yes, I can imagine. Yeah.
And I just had to do it. There were two choices: go out of business or do it. That was it.
Yeah. And I'm glad. This may shock you all. I mean, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. My gardening costs have not changed at all.
I'm not stunned at all.
Yeah. It's still zero.
I believe they're probably close to zero if I remember correctly.
Very, very similar to my interior decorating cost.
Right.
Yeah. Same price.
Yes.
Zero.
That's true for most people. I mean, gardening is only for people who really love the gardening.
Of course.
That's why they spend money on gardening, because
it's about
you spend money on what you love, right?
Yeah, and I'm not picking on your industry.
No, of course not.
Yeah, I anything you're doing has integrity and quality, and I'm sure it's just not my thing. It's sort of similar to football and you or something. It's just not your thing.
Well, actually, I enjoy some football. Just saying, you're the one who dislikes baseball. I can handle some football, but I don't. Well, that's we've done that rabbit hole. We'll stay away from that one.
We'll stay away from it today. I mean, but we'll revisit it. Football season's about to be.
It's coming, so we'll have lots of opportunity. It's not a problem.
And perspective on so many things is once we become comfortable, you and I jokingly do this football and baseball. We have fun with it. And we don't really, anybody ever thinks we're serious, we're not. And it's this.
Do we have to do a disclaimer on that? I hope not.
I hope not. But it's what happens with us is that's part of the humor. That's in the same category. Right. We have our connections, and I make fun of baseball, which, by the way, I don't hate as bad as I say I hate it. It's
only when you're talking to me, right?
Yeah. I was watching a high school. This was a clip on YouTube. There's a young man, I forget what state, the stereotypical bottom of the ninth. Bases loaded. They're down. They're down by 3. He 3 balls, 2 strikes. The scenario.
Right.
He fouls off 3 in a row and then hits this gigantic grand slam to win the game.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, there's nothing more exciting.
That's
than
fun.
That.
Yeah. That's really fun.
That was to watch his. I mean, heights. It just, oh my God, that energy was so amazing. So giving you that on baseball, I really
Probably the best part of that is watching his expression when it
well,
happens.
that's the fun. I mean, because you felt energized. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the young man that does the pommel horse in the Olympics.
Yeah.
This kid, I love that story.
Yes.
You know, it's probably the top story for me. There's a couple others I like, but that one I just love his energy, his perspective, and the specialist. And you know, he ended up with a bronze medal. He's probably one of the most famous people there.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It isn't always the gold medal winners that capture our
Yeah.
attention. It's the ones who exceed their own expectations.
Yeah, or do something like the guy that does the airsoft pistol. Everybody else is wearing all those gigantic assisting equipments.
Mhm.
He has his hand in his pocket just shooting, and it's silver. It's like amazing. He just comes. Wasn't equipped at all.
There's the woman who won the 10,000 meters. She wasn't
Yes,
even supposed to be at the Olympics.
yes, yes. I mean, I love those stories. And there's a guy that didn't medal at all. He's going to be very famous. He was doing the pole vault, and his penis knocked off the bar.
Oh no!
Literally. I mean, that's not inappropriate. It's the part that knocked the bar off. So he didn't win anything, but in some arenas he probably did. To be honest.
Oh
with
yeah.
you.
That's a meme that's going to play for generations.
generations. I mean, that got a lot of attention. So I mean, and we talk a lot about the negativity of social media, and you know, I hear that a lot. You and I don't talk about it as much, but that's one of the good things of social media. You get clips and snippets and backstories that you would have missed in the normal. I love these. The Olympics have been very good because of that. It's pointed out some of these things I missed, and great stories. And what I love about the Olympics is when the underdogs, the people that don't belong, and I'm a big fan of obviously the USA and our Olympic team. So this isn't a slight, but when some random team of nobodies from some weird country beats basically our NBA players, side of me is like, I mean, okay, you
For me,
that.
the Olympic event, of course, this is Winter Olympics rather than Summer Olympics, but the winter event and the winter story that epitomizes what you're talking about for me is the old story about the Jamaican bobsled team.
I love it. Great story. Yes.
I love that. I mean, it is perfect. It doesn't even matter. They didn't even come close to winning a medal. Nobody cared about that.
Well, in fact, most people, if you ask them about it, they will say, "Oh yeah, they came back with all that stuff and won that the story."
Right.
Yeah, because and they didn't win a medal. The fact that they were there, they put it together. I love those underdog stories. I love those anomalous wins. You expect the best athletes in the world to win. Yeah. So when somebody comes in and makes a showing or does something, and like the pommel horse guy, I mean, the Olympic team was criticized for including him on the team because all he does is the pommel horse, one of the most boring things in the world, but he does it incredibly well. Yeah. And his win in the overall he had to do well for the team to win the bronze, and he nailed it. I mean, he nailed it. He can't barely see without his glasses. He's a self-described nerd. Yeah. He meditates before he goes. It's just he's not your normal guy on the Olympic team. I mean, while he's in good shape, he's not that super jack guy the other guys are. It's just, but it's a great story. And I love those stories.
Isn't it interesting how we're bringing out these stories that tie in so beautifully with the topic, because the topic is about what makes you smile.
Yes.
And here's some great examples of stuff. I mean, this stuff, how can you not smile at this stuff?
Well, and that's what, if you filter for things in any given day to smile at, to laugh at, life offers you plenty of absurdities, and you can either be frustrated by them or just laugh at them. And so putting your filter, no matter what's your perspective when you walk out the door, what are you looking for? One of the things on my list to look for, first of all, I'm looking for any kind of beauty out there. I love to see the sunsets. I love to see, so I like to filter for that. I'm looking for humor. But I also am looking for just the stories, the connections, just the stuff out there, and that stuff makes me smile. And I love the underdog. I love when my clients who, the one of my clients is leaving. He will be leaving maybe next week for college.
Hmm.
This kid a few years ago was a train wreck in high school. He
Wow.
could not read because of his ADHD, and
Hmm.
so we worked really hard, and we found a technique where he listens to Audible or listens to the book on tape if it's not an Audible while he reads the book.
Oh, wow.
And it's that combination. He went from, in various classes, I mean, it's like D's and F's, and his teacher thought he was cheating because the first test he took after that, he got a 97,
Oh, wow.
and she literally called him in and said, "What? How did we don't? How did you cheat?" And he, "I didn't," and he never got below a 90 after that.
Wow.
Yeah, and
What a
so
cool technique too.
yeah.
I love how you tied two senses in at the same time to help them learn it.
Well, and that the sort of the concept of neuro-linguistic programming is understanding how you learn,
Mm,
how you observe, visual, audio. It could be, there's a lot of things. A lot of my clients listen to there's a program for called Speechify. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It can turn any text into voice
sure.
message,
Okay.
and so you can also play that at any speed. You can slow it down and speed it
Oh, you
up.
told me that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
And one of the things that happens with people with ADHD brain, I listen to my Audible books at 2 times the speed.
Hmm.
And I retain so much more that way because an ADHD brain is not a deficient brain. The problem is it just has too much going on. So when
Yeah.
you speed it up, it has to cut out other things to pay attention. I retain far more at twice the speed. And it works. So using those programs, so I like to use various techniques of figuring out how every individual learns that's struggling in school, and then optimize that learning. And once we find that, it's amazing. And the school system, I'm not being critical. They have a lot of kids. I understand all that, but they don't ever focus on that. You got to read the book, and you got to
Mm,
read that. You got to read it. And I have been to several IEP meetings. That's a, if you don't know what that is, a thing where you have a meeting and have accommodation for kids with various disabilities.
mm.
And I have fought hard and I've never lost, shockingly, with this topic, but because I'm not going to shut up until they agree. And but there were several teachers that were opposed to me bringing the audiobooks as an accommodation. But
Really?
once they saw, yeah, because it's, I don't know why. But they saw that, and I'm like, I've seldom had the audiobooks alone. I really encourage them reading it while they listen, and that helps increase their reading acuity.
Right.
It's a really cool concept. Also, better retention because you're getting both the audio and the visual connected.
Hmm.
Another technique. I have one young man that he reads his books out loud,
Mm.
and nobody has to be around. But he'll
Sure.
do his reading out loud, and
Yep.
there's something about that connection from reading and speaking it he
Yeah.
retains. He had a similar increase in productivity and grades at school using that technique.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
yeah. So
So how nice to know that. I mean, the main topic was about how to use smiling and basically leverage that to break through barriers and to get ourselves in a better space. But how nice to know that here are some of the other ways we can improve the way we feel about stuff, because that's one of the big deals that goes on with somebody who has a learning disability. They don't feel good, and you're
Well,
finding a way to make them feel good so they can actually succeed. They can actually
well,
learn.
Well, and the point before I got on my ADHD rant there was the when I smile when they send me a picture of their grades, or
Yeah.
this one kid that got accepted, he had no comment. He just took a picture of his acceptance letter
Oh,
and
wow.
sent it to me. Huge smile on my face at that point. Huge
Yeah.
smile.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are moments that, obviously you love that. See other people's success. That makes me smile. That makes me happy to see the work to really get invested with these people. They become family to me. One of the greatest honors I've ever had in my business is a young man who I'm very close to this day. He started working with me when he was 16. He's graduated college. He's been through quite a bit of stuff. Uh, he is engaged to be married in September of 2025. And
Fantastic.
and he messaged me this week and asked me if I would officiate his wedding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about something that'll put a smile on your face.
Yeah, I was like, I couldn't imagine that honor being asked. It's
Right.
amazing. He
Yeah.
said, I can't think of anybody, and my fiance agrees, of who would be the perfect person to do that. And it's very, very, it made me very happy to be asked.
Yeah, sure. That's fabulous.
Yes.
One last thing I want to bring in before we wrap up for the day, because I think it's important. We've been talking here quite extensively about the value of smiling, the value of laughing, the value of breaking through the hardness, breaking through all the points of resistance we put up. But there's one thing that we haven't really touched on that I think is quite important, and that is the value of humor as humor itself. Just not having it attached to anything, not having it be a part of some greater purpose, but just liking the humor for
Yes.
with no agenda. Because ultimately that's what makes all the rest of it possible. I mean,
Yes.
your little 4-year-old neighbor peeing in the backyard is a perfect example of that. There's literally nothing you can tie that to
Yeah.
that has any significance in life other than it helped you to break out of a really horrible funk you were in because you lost your son.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief. The universe delivers these things to us. And
And
I
I
think
love
that's the
that.
reason I'm bringing
Yes.
this up. When the universe is always delivering these things to us, how often do we ignore them?
Oh,
How often do we ignore when these things come through?
well, if you look at that using, my neighbor, peeing and then swearing to God he wasn't peeing as he was peeing, if TJ, if that would have happened before TJ died, if that would have happened when I was at work, I wasn't outside, if that would have happened, that would have happened sort of in a vacuum. That would have been something just, you never know about. And so that's why I feel that's where the universe brings this. This is where a lot of people sort of roll their eyes at me, which, by the way, that happens a lot.
Yeah. Can't
But
imagine why.
yeah, I can't either. But I roll my eyes at myself sometimes, to be honest with you. So, but the idea that was delivered at that moment, at that mindset for me, I can't dismiss that. I can't dismiss that. And since then, the connection that I have developed with their family is something that started with that. So I can't dismiss all of that stuff. It's just you see those connections, and my life would be much different in many ways if I didn't see that, didn't laugh at that day. And and I would, they're not here to speak for themselves, but I think if they were to hear this, they would agree their life has been altered as well because of that in a positive way. Yeah.
Sure. So that, to me, that's all positive reinforcement that reminds all of us when something comes along like that, take advantage of it.
Yes.
No matter what your
Completely.
state of mind is. I mean,
Try.
you don't have
Yeah.
to have been caught in a traumatic situation in order to decide to laugh at something.
Yeah.
But pay attention when it comes along and allow yourself to respond in kind. Because I
Yes.
think probably the worst thing we can do to ourselves is to have something come along like that. We know it's there and we don't take advantage of it.
Yeah. I love that's being able to. How much do we miss in general, but particularly what you're talking about? I mean,
Yeah.
being able to pay attention is one thing that happens is those that practice the law of attraction. I'm always amazed at the people that are doing what I call the front end work. They're properly aligning their vibration with their properly doing, but they miss so many of what could be the response to that. It's this. So, real quick wrap up story toward the end. One of my clients is she's a big shot with a big insurance company and professional, very successful. She's way up in the company, and we work on various things. I helped her sort of get through the corporate world, and so she sort of conquered all of that. And so her new thing was, I really want to attract a companion, a relationship. And so that's okay. So we talked about those techniques and how to do it.
Right.
And she's like, Joel, I don't know why this isn't working. All the rest work. Then, and a little while later, she's telling me how this guy at work was asking these questions, and a little while later, this personal trainer said, "Hey, you need to work out." And there's like 6 guys that came up to her that were clearly interested,
Yeah.
clearly.
Right.
And she goes, I said, "Well, you mean it's not working, or you're just ignoring that it's working?" It's just, and she goes, "You think they were flirting? Are you kidding?" I mean, it couldn't be any more obvious. Unless they were wearing a shirt that says "I'm flirting," that wouldn't be it. And so she was able to look at that. And I said, she said, "Well, it just all felt so, And I said, "Would you have been interested in the guy?" She goes, "I didn't think of it that way." And I go, maybe if you're going to attract it, you got to be able to accept it. It's just, you manifested it, but if you're on the not accepting what shows up, then that's the problem. You got to accept what comes there, and then say, "Oh, okay, wow, I literally did attract that."
Yeah, that's a good way to wrap up, because it's a reminder that it's up to us to pay
Yes,
attention to what's being delivered. The stuff's being delivered all the time.
all the time. I would venture to say most people are far more far more effective at using the law of attraction than they realize.
Oh,
But
God, yeah.
their flaw is not recognizing when it arrives. Like,
Yes. Dismissing it.
somebody, when somebody says, "Well, I want to attract a lot of wealth," and then 10 different opportunities come up, and they're like, "Oh, hey, yeah, no, that's that.
I'm not going to do that one. Yeah.
Yeah." So, oh, okay. Well, the one thing I was always grateful for when I left my job / fired from my job at my company I was working for, when you and I knew each other, is I wasn't going to leave that job, and I was given the gift of that, and that set me free. I was able to, because even though I wanted to leave, I attracted the departure. I now see that. It seemed sort of traumatic at the time to lose that real high paying job or whatever. But I realized I didn't want to be there. I didn't like the energy there. It was a wonderful start to being in Virginia. I made incredible connections that I wouldn't have been able to be successful in my private practice if I didn't have that original connection. So it was a necessary step. And I guess the universe got tired of me waiting to pull the trigger, and pull the trigger for me.
Pull the trigger. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Worked
You're
out
not going to pull the
perfectly.
trigger? Okay, we'll do it for you.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly. It could not have worked out any better. One of my favorite parts of my life, how that worked out.
It's a great way to wrap it up. Joel, as usual, we threw another touchdown. I even stayed away from the baseball metaphor.
Thank you. See, very kind, very kind.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
I don't know what happened. I really like that.